Late at night, when most of the world was asleep, Keanu Reeves held his phone in his hand and stared at the screen for a long time. The city outside his window was quiet, the lights of Los Angeles glowing in the distance. He could hear the faint hum of traffic far away, but inside his apartment there was only silence. He had been carrying a thought in his heart for years, something he never had the courage to say. And that night, he felt the weight of it more than ever. With a deep breath, he pressed the call button, and on the other end, the name Sandra Bullock appeared. When Sandra's voice came through, soft and surprised, Keanu paused. He almost hung up, but then her gentle tone steadied him. "Keanu, it's late." "Is everything all right?" she asked. There was a moment of silence where he closed his eyes, remembering the many years they had shared laughter, work, and friendship. He whispered back, "I just needed to talk. I need to tell you something I never said before." His voice carried both fear and tenderness. Sandra instantly knew this was not just a casual call. There was something heavy in his heart. As the night air wrapped around him, Keanu began to recall the old days. The days when their paths crossed on set, when long hours turned into stories, and when smiles turned into memories that never left. He told her about the first time he noticed her laughter, how it made even the hardest days lighter. He told her about how her kindness stayed in his heart when he was going through his own silent battles. Sandra listened quietly, her breath slow and steady, because she felt something deep stirring too. She remembered those same days, those same moments, and realized they never truly left her either. Keanu's voice grew softer. "I never said this because I was afraid it would change everything. But silence has its own cost. I didn't want to lose what we had, so I carried this feeling alone." Sandra closed her eyes, holding the phone tighter, her heart racing. She could feel his honesty, his vulnerability, and it shook her. The bond they shared had always been strong, but now it was taking a new shape, fragile and powerful at the same time. As the minutes passed, the call became more than words. It became a confession of years lost and emotions hidden. Keanu spoke about the nights when he thought of calling her but stopped himself. He admitted how he often replayed memories, wondering what if he had been braver. Sandra felt tears welling up, because she too had moments when she thought of him late at night, wondering about the same what if. The silence between them was no longer empty. It was full of meaning, full of echoes from the past and questions about the future. Then came the twist of emotion neither of them expected. Sandra whispered back, "Keanu, do you think I never felt the same? Do you think I never noticed the way you cared?" Her words trembled, filled with both courage and vulnerability. Keanu froze, his chest tight, his eyes fixed on the city lights that suddenly looked brighter. He realized they had both been carrying the same weight in different ways, both afraid of breaking what was already so precious. And now, with one late-night call, the truth was finally finding its voice. That night was not just about confession. It was about rediscovery, about realizing that the strongest connections can survive silence, time, and fear. As the call stretched on, they laughed softly, they cried quietly, and they let the walls fall that had stood between them for years. The world outside slept, but for Keanu and Sandra, it was the beginning of a night that would change how they looked at everything. The respect they always had for each other deepened. The humility in their voices showed their fear of loss, and the resilience in their hearts reminded them that kindness was the reason they always stayed close, no matter how much time passed. And as the first hour of that late call ended, Keanu whispered, almost like a promise, "Thank you for listening. This is the first time I feel free of the silence I carried." Sandra smiled through her tears, knowing that sometimes the words we hide for years are the very words that bring us back to life. After the long silence broke, and Keanu's heart finally spoke what it had carried for years, the call did not end. Sandra stayed on the line, her hand resting on the table, her mind racing through countless memories. She thought of the film sets, the long days, the moments when he would quietly notice things about her no one else did, the way he offered kindness without asking for anything back. Now those pieces were all coming together, forming a picture she had never allowed herself to see fully. "Keanu," she said softly, "do you ever wonder why life kept us apart in that way?" There was no anger in her voice, only a quiet ache. Keanu sighed deeply. I wonder all the time. Maybe it was timing. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was both. He paused, his words heavy but honest. But I know this. I never stopped caring. Those words carried across the line like a wave. Sandra leaned back in her chair, eyes moist, and whispered, I never stopped either. For a moment, the weight of years pressed down on them both. But then came something neither of them expected. Sandra asked, almost as if she was afraid of the answer. What made you call me tonight? After so long? Keanu hesitated, then admitted, I had a dream last night. In that dream, we were sitting in a small cafe, just the two of us. You were laughing, and I was watching you. It felt real, so real that when I woke up, I realized I couldn't keep this inside any longer. Life is too short to keep holding back. His confession stirred something powerful inside Sandra. She thought of the people she lost over the years, the fragile nature of time, and how often we wait for the perfect moment that never comes. She whispered, You're right. Life doesn't wait. As the night deepened, their conversation grew more personal. They shared secrets they had never told anyone. Keanu spoke of loneliness, of carrying grief that sometimes felt unbearable. He admitted how he often chose silence because it was easier than being misunderstood. Sandra listened with compassion, her heart softening even more. Then she opened up about her own struggles, about nights when fame felt like a cage, and when her smile in public hid quiet tears in private. They realized they had both been carrying heavy loads, but never thought to share them with each other fully. In that moment, their friendship grew into something deeper, built not only on laughter and shared work, but on pain, trust, and unspoken understanding. Then came a twist that neither of them expected. Keanu, with his voice trembling slightly, said, Sandra, there's something else I never told you. Back then, when everyone thought it was just chemistry for the screen, it was real for me. I didn't know how to handle it, so I pretended it wasn't there. Sandra's breath caught. Her fingers tightened around the phone. She whispered, I felt it too, but I thought maybe it was only in my heart. I was afraid to believe it. Their honesty filled the night with a mix of relief and regret. The regret of years lost, but also the relief that the truth was no longer locked away. Both of them laughed softly through tears, realizing how strange and beautiful it was to finally say out loud what had been hidden for so long. As the hours passed, their words slowed, but the connection did not fade. There was still so much unsaid, so many questions about what this meant now. Sandra finally said, Keanu, whatever happens next, promise me one thing. Don't disappear again. Don't carry this alone anymore. Keanu, his voice firm yet gentle, replied, I promise. No more silence. When dawn began to break outside their windows, neither wanted to hang up. The world was waking, but for them, the night had been a new beginning. It was not just about love or confession. It was about respect, humility, and the courage to let go of fear. For the first time in years, they both felt lighter. It was as if a door had opened to a path they never walked before, and though they did not know where it would lead, they were ready to take the first step, together. The night had turned into dawn, but neither Keanu nor Sandra wanted to end the call. The soft light of morning touched their windows, yet the conversation felt like it had only just begun. Keanu sat quietly for a moment, listening to Sandra's breathing on the other side of the line. There was comfort in it, a reminder that after years of silence, he was finally heard. Sandra, he said slowly, do you ever think about how different things could have been if we had spoken like this before? If I had told you earlier? Sandra's voice carried both warmth and sadness. I do think about it. Sometimes I wonder if maybe we were not ready back then. Maybe we needed to live through everything we did to be able to hear each other like this now. Those words touched Keanu deeply. He realized that sometimes timing, even when it feels cruel, brings its own hidden wisdom. But a part of him still ached for the years lost, the laughter they could have shared, the comfort they could have given each other when life became heavy. The conversation drifted to moments from their past. Sandra reminded him of the quiet breaks they used to take between filming, when they would sit away from the noise, drinking coffee and just talking. Keanu smiled, remembering how those small moments always felt more important than the bright lights or the cameras. You were always the calm in the storm, he admitted. I never told you how much I needed that. Sandra grew quiet, her throat tightening. "And you were always the one who reminded me I was more than what people saw on the screen. You never looked at me like a star. You looked at me like a person. I can't tell you how much that meant." As the memories unfolded, something new began to grow. It was no longer just about what they missed. It was about what they could still have if they had the courage to hold on this time. But then came a moment of hesitation. Sandra asked, "Keanu, why now? Why risk saying all this after so long?" Keanu leaned his head back, his voice low and honest. "Because I realized I was living like tomorrow was promised. But it isn't. I don't want to leave this world with words still trapped inside me. I needed you to know what you mean to me." His honesty shook Sandra. She thought of her own life, the choices she made, the walls she built to protect herself from hurt. She had always been strong, but strength sometimes came with loneliness. Now, hearing Keanu speak with such vulnerability, she felt her own walls tremble. Tears slipped down her face as she whispered, "You don't know how many times I wanted to hear those words." There was silence, but it was a silence filled with emotion, a silence that said more than words could. Both of them felt the same question rising, though neither dared to ask it yet. What happens now? As the call went on, something unexpected happened. Sandra confessed a memory she had never shared. "Do you remember that night after the wrap party when we sat outside under the stars? You walked me to my car and I almost told you something important, but I stopped. I thought it wasn't the right time." Keanu's breath caught. I remember the way you looked at me. I felt like you were going to say something, but then you smiled instead." "I always wondered what it was," Sandra's voice trembled. "I wanted to tell you that I felt more than friendship. But I was scared. I didn't want to ruin what we had, so I kept it inside just like you did." The truth hit both of them hard. All those years, both of them carried the same feeling, the same fear, and the same silence. And now, hearing it spoken aloud, it felt like a missed chance, but also a second chance. Keanu whispered, almost in awe, "We could have been lost in silence forever, but somehow we're here. Somehow, we found our way back to this conversation." The sky outside grew brighter, but their hearts felt even more awake. The weight of unspoken love and hidden fear was lifting, replaced by something fragile yet hopeful. They both knew this call was no ordinary call. It was a turning point. The world might still see them as friends, as colleagues, as stars, but what they shared in those hours was something far beyond what the world could ever know. And as the morning sun broke fully through the horizon, Keanu said softly, "This is not the end of the conversation. This is only the beginning." Sandra smiled through her tears, whispering back, "Yes, the beginning." The sun had fully risen, painting the sky with soft gold and pale blue, but neither Keanu nor Sandra felt tired. Their voices carried the weight of years, yet there was also a new lightness between them. It felt as though they were discovering each other all over again, not as actors, not as public figures, but as two people who had been quietly connected by invisible threads for decades. Keanu sat by his window, looking at the empty streets below. He had never been one to speak much, yet with Sandra that night, words kept coming. "I used to watch you from a distance," he confessed. "Not in the way people might think, but in the way someone watches someone they admire. I saw how kind you were to everyone. Even when you were tired, you made people feel seen. That kindness stayed with me." Sandra's eyes filled with tears. She leaned back against her couch, whispering, "And I watched you too. You carried your pain so quietly, but I noticed. I noticed the way you stayed gentle even when life wasn't gentle to you. That's what I always respected most about you." The line grew silent for a few seconds, but it was a silence that spoke louder than noise. Both of them felt the truth. They had been mirrors to each other's hidden selves, quietly admiring, quietly longing, quietly afraid. Then Sandra asked a question that shifted the tone. "Keanu, what do we do with this now? We've carried these feelings for so long. Now that it's out, what happens?" Keanu hesitated. His voice was steady, but his heart raced. "We could pretend nothing changed. We could say it's just memories, just confessions, and move on. Or we could see where this path leads. I don't know if it's too late, but I don't want to regret again." Sandra's breath caught. The thought scared her, but it also gave her a strange sense of hope. "I don't want to regret either. she admitted softly. But what if the world doesn't understand? What if people talk? What if it becomes too heavy? Keanu smiled faintly, though she could not see it. The world will always talk, but the world doesn't have to live with our silence. We do. His words struck her deeply. For years, she had built her life around careful choices, protecting her heart. But now she realized that fear had stolen just as much as time. She wiped her tears and whispered, "Then maybe it's time to be brave." At that moment, their bond shifted again. It was no longer just a confession of the past. It was a decision about the future. But just as their hearts opened, something unexpected happened. Sandra paused, her tone turning uncertain. "Keanu, before we take any step forward, there's something you should know. Something I've never said." Her voice trembled. Keanu straightened, sensing the weight of her words. "What is it?" he asked gently. Sandra hesitated. "There was a time years ago when I almost gave up on us completely. I told myself you didn't care. I even convinced myself to stop thinking about you. But every time I tried, something would remind me, your voice, a memory, even a small detail. I realized I couldn't erase you, no matter how hard I tried." Keanu closed his eyes, his heart heavy with both sorrow and gratitude. "You don't know how much that means to me," he said softly, "because there were nights I tried to do the same. I thought maybe if I let go, it would hurt less. But it never did." Their voices broke, both of them caught in the same ache, the same truth. They had spent years running from feelings that never faded. Now, with everything out in the open, they stood at the edge of something new, something frightening, something real. Keanu finally said, "Sandra, I don't know what tomorrow will look like, but I do know this. I don't want to walk through it without you." Sandra's tears fell freely now. She whispered back, "Then don't. Let's not waste another day." And in that moment, as the morning grew brighter outside, the darkness of silence that had followed them for years began to fade. They did not know what challenges would come, but for the first time they were ready to face them together. With honesty, with humility, with courage. The new day had fully arrived, and still, Keanu and Sandra stayed connected. It was no longer just a phone call. It had turned into something bigger, a bridge that carried their hearts from the past into a fragile but hopeful future. Sandra sat by her window now, watching the sunlight spread across the street. "Keanu," she said gently, "I'm afraid of what this means. Not because of you, but because of me. I've built walls for so long, and breaking them feels dangerous." Keanu's voice was calm, filled with quiet strength. "I understand. I've built walls too. We both learned to survive by hiding pieces of ourselves. But maybe we've been protecting ourselves from the very thing that could heal us." Those words stayed with her. She knew he was right. Pain had shaped them, but so had kindness. And now, choosing to trust might be the bravest thing they could do. Their talk shifted to lighter memories for a while. They laughed about the little things on set, the awkward moments, the inside jokes, the way people around them used to whisper about their chemistry. Both of them smiled, realizing that those whispers had been true, though neither admitted it back then. But soon the laughter gave way to another silence, heavier than before. Sandra broke it softly. "Keanu, what if we're too late? What if life already passed us by?" Keanu thought for a moment, then replied, "Time has taken many things from me, but it has also given me perspective. We may not have had all those years, but we have this moment now, and maybe that's enough to start something real." Her heart ached, but his words planted a seed of hope. She closed her eyes, letting herself imagine a different future, one where she didn't have to wonder anymore, one where she didn't have to hide what she felt. Then came a surprising turn. Sandra admitted, "Keanu, there was someone once, someone I thought I could open up to, but every time I looked at him, I realized he wasn't you. I never told anyone that. I buried it because I didn't want to face what it meant." Keanu's chest tightened. He whispered, "And I kept my life quiet because every time I tried to move forward, a part of me was still holding on to you. Their honesty was painful, but it was also freeing. The masks were gone, the excuses gone. All that remained was truth." Sandra wiped her tears, her voice unsteady but determined. "So where do we go from here?" Do we just keep talking like this? Do we see each other?
What do we do?
Keanu took a deep breath. I think we stop hiding. Maybe we start small. We meet, we talk face to face, we see if what we feel now can carry into reality. No expectations, no pressure, just honesty. His suggestion made her heart race. The idea of seeing him again, not as actors on a set, not as friends at an event, but as two people finally facing what they had hidden, was both terrifying and beautiful. She whispered, face to face. It feels like the scariest thing, but also the only right thing. Keanu's tone softened. Then let's not run anymore. Not from each other. Not from ourselves. In that moment, both of them knew the call was no longer enough. The words had broken the silence, but now action had to follow. As the morning grew brighter and the city fully woke, Sandra whispered something she had not said in years, words that carried both fear and longing. Keanu, promise me this isn't just a moment you'll forget when the day moves on. His reply came without hesitation. I promise. This is not just a moment. This is the beginning of everything I never had the courage to say before. The line grew quiet again, but it was not the silence of fear. It was the silence of hearts preparing for the next step, a step into the unknown, guided by respect, humility, resilience, and kindness. The hours after their call felt different for both Keanu and Sandra. They carried the weight of what was said, but also the fragile hope of what could come next. For years they had walked through life with silence between them, but now that silence had broken, it was impossible to go back. Keanu sat in his apartment, staring at the city, his thoughts racing. He had spoken more honestly in one night than he had in years, yet a small part of him feared what would happen when words turned into action. Would the connection survive face to face? Would the truth feel just as strong outside the safety of a phone call? On the other side of the city, Sandra felt the same questions. She looked at herself in the mirror, seeing not the actress the world admired, but the woman who had quietly carried feelings she never dared to name. Her heart beat faster at the thought of seeing him, not as a co-star, not as just a friend, but as the man who had finally said what she always longed to hear. The decision was quiet, but clear. They would meet. No cameras, no public, no stage. Just two people after years of silence, choosing honesty. A few days later, they found themselves walking toward the same small cafe in the corner of Los Angeles. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't famous. It was simple and hidden. A place where they could be just themselves. Keanu arrived first, sitting at a corner table, his heart steady but nervous. When Sandra walked in, his breath caught. She looked the same, yet different. The same smile, the same warmth, but with a softness that came from years of carrying unspoken truths. Their eyes met, and in that moment, the years between them vanished. She walked toward him, and for a second neither spoke. Then Sandra smiled through her nerves. So, this is real. Keanu nodded slowly, his voice gentle. It's real. They sat together, and at first the silence felt heavy. But then the laughter returned. The same laughter that once carried them through long days on set. They talked about small things first, the kind of details that filled the space with comfort. But soon the deeper words returned. I was terrified to see you, Sandra admitted, her fingers brushing the edge of her cup. I thought maybe what we felt that night would fade in the daylight. But it hasn't. Keanu looked at her carefully, his voice low and steady. It hasn't faded for me either. If anything, it feels clearer now. Their conversation grew deeper. They spoke of regrets, of the paths that pulled them apart, of the choices they made out of fear. Each word was a step closer, each confession a thread weaving them tighter together. But then came the unexpected moment. Sandra leaned closer, her eyes holding his. Keanu, I don't want us to waste any more years. But I also don't want us to rush. I need to know this isn't just nostalgia. I need to know it's real now, not just in memory. Her honesty struck him. He nodded slowly. You're right. We need to take this one step at a time. But I know this. What I feel now isn't just the past. It's the present. It's stronger than ever. They both sat quietly for a while, letting the weight of those words settle. Outside the cafe, life moved as usual. People passed by, unaware of the moment unfolding inside. But for Keanu and Sandra, it was not ordinary. It was the meeting they had both imagined, feared, and longed for. As they stood to leave, Keanu gently placed his hand on Sandra's arm. "This is just the beginning," he said softly. Sandra looked at him, her eyes shining. "Then let's not be afraid this time." They walked out together into the daylight, side by side. The city around them was loud, but inside their hearts carried a quiet promise to face whatever came next, together, without silence. The days after their meeting in the small cafe felt different, almost like a new season had begun. For so long, Keanu and Sandra had been walking in circles, hiding their truth in silence. Now that the silence was gone, every conversation, every glance, every moment carried a new kind of weight, the weight of possibility. But possibility can bring fear, too. Sandra found herself lying awake at night, asking questions she was too afraid to say out loud. What if the past repeated itself? What if they hurt each other by trying? She had lived much of her life protecting her heart, and now she was opening it again. Keanu had his own fears. He had lost people before. He knew how fragile life could be, how quickly things could be taken away. He didn't want to promise more than he could give. Yet he also knew that honesty with Sandra felt like the safest place he had ever stood. One evening, they met again, this time at a quiet park under the soft glow of streetlights. There were no cameras, no noise, just two people carrying decades of unspoken feelings. They walked slowly, side by side, their steps calm, their hearts racing. After a long silence, Sandra stopped and looked at him. "Keanu, do you think we waited too long?" Her voice trembled, not with anger, but with fear. Keanu turned to her, his face calm but his eyes full of truth. "Maybe we did, but maybe that's what makes this real now. We've lived, we've lost, we've learned. And still, after everything, here we are." Her eyes softened. She realized he was right. Time had not stolen their connection. It had tested it, and somehow it had survived. They sat down on a bench, the quiet night wrapping around them. Sandra's hands shook slightly and Keanu noticed. Gently, he placed his hand over hers. She looked at him, her heart full. "Why do you still believe in us after so much time?" His answer was simple, but it carried the weight of years. "Because I've never stopped. I tried to move on. I tried to silence it, but it never left. Some things are not meant to fade. They wait, they survive. They remind us of who we are." Her tears fell freely now, but they were not tears of sadness. They were tears of release, of finally hearing what her heart had longed for. And in that moment, Keanu spoke the words he had never said, not even on that long night when he first called. "Sandra, I love you. I've loved you for years in silence, and I don't want to hide it anymore." The world seemed to stop. Sandra's breath caught, her eyes locked on his. Then, with a trembling voice, she whispered back, "And I love you. I always have. I just didn't know how to be brave enough to say it." Those words hung in the air, soft and powerful, rewriting the years of silence with honesty. For the first time, there was no fear, no hiding, no wondering. They leaned into each other, not with the urgency of youth, but with the quiet strength of people who had carried love through storms and time. It wasn't about rushing. It was about finally allowing themselves to feel what was always there. The night passed with laughter, tears, and promises. They spoke not of fame, not of the past, but of the simple things. Dinners they would share, walks they would take, moments they would no longer miss. And as the stars shone above, they both understood something important. This story wasn't about what they lost. It was about what they found. They had learned that respect, humility, resilience, and kindness were the roots of everything strong. They had learned that silence can hold love, but honesty sets it free. In the end, it wasn't the late-night call that changed everything. It was the courage to keep talking after it. It was the courage to let love speak louder than fear. As they walked away together hand in hand, Sandra whispered with a smile, "We're not too late, Keanu. We're right on time." And Keanu, his heart lighter than it had been in years, smiled back. "Yes, right on time."